Pretty strong words there from Senator Chris Murphy, who joined me on State of the Union yesterday. President Trump's fondness for Vladimir Putin, bad blood with Zelensky, it all goes back years. In 2019, Trump was impeached after pressuring Zelensky to investigate the Bidens during a call about providing military aid. Alexander Vindman was the National Security Council's top Ukraine expert. He was on the line for that phone call and ultimately testified before Congress. You see it there. He is now the author of a new book, The Folly of Realism: How the West Deceived Itself About Russia and Betrayed Ukraine, and joins me now with the latest. Wow, this could not be more timely, this book coming out. Alex, thank you for being here. I just want to start with you where we started the program, which is another escalation by President Trump when it comes to Zelensky. This statement on his social media: this is the worst statement that could have been made by Zelensky, and this is the key. And America will not put up with it for much longer. And again, the statement he was referring to was Zelensky saying that we could be very far away from a ceasefire deal.
I think Trump is doubling down on regime change, not talking about Putin. The Biden administration, right or wrong, day late, dollar short, called Putin a dictator. They're now talking about regime change in Ukraine, our ally, and not the inveterate enemy that has threatened us with nuclear weapons, that has been aggressively attacking us internally here. And it's a shocking turn of events that this is an administration that is in line, according to the Russians and according to the Kremlin's own statements, with their policies. Their views of the world are converging and burning bridges as soon as they get to them with our allies. It's
Can you talk, you said regime change. What you're referring to is the pressure. Mike Waltz did it with me on State of the Union yesterday. We're hearing it elsewhere, the pressure on Zelensky to resign. That's what you're referring to?
That's exactly what I'm referring to. I think, Lindsey Graham mentioned it almost immediately afterwards. Then that it got picked up by the White House. Marco Rubio kind of alluded to something similar. Mike Waltz. These are supposed to be the adults in the second administration. I mean, they're all, sycophants to a certain extent. They knew when they were shining up, they would have to bend over backwards to not just do what the president wants, but kind of, suck up to him. So they're in order to do that, they need to go ahead and damn the person that somehow slighted him. Zelensky, who was in that room to sign a deal that both he and President Trump wanted, but was not in a position to look weak. Why? Because he's a leader of a nation at war. He is talking to his own troops on the ground.
So you don't think he had any choice but to push back?
He had no choice to push back on the most egregious developments that occurred in that meeting. It wasn't just the fact that President Trump was looking for a thank you. It wasn't just the fact that Zelensky had to pander or flatter the other Western diplomats that have come through, because they know that's an effective way to communicate. The reason he pushed back is because Trump was saying, or just said, that Zelensky was a dictator. He was saying that Russia was not the aggressor. And Zelensky had just finished showing him pictures of troops that were being abused, the POWs, and talked about 20,000 children that were kidnapped. And he could not accept a situation in which the narrative was completely changing, and he's the leader of a country that's the subject of those attacks. He had no choice.
In its sort of, I don't know, in a vacuum or just generally speaking, you're okay with this minerals deal, the economic deal?
Sure.
Do you think that Zelensky is right to demand security guarantees along with it from the U.S.?
I think what he's trying to do is, what the subtitle of the book says. He wants to make sure the U.S. doesn't continue to deceive itself about Russia and doesn't continue to betray Ukraine. The only lasting peace for Ukraine is one in which there are some sort of security guarantees on the back end, that the Europeans, that the U.S. is going to be there to ensure that Russia doesn't take a pause and reinvade. Why? Because Russia has broken a score of different agreements that it had with Ukraine at various times over the course of 30 plus years. That's the only thing that prevents a spiraling of the relationship further down the road, and he knows that. So I don't think he was absolutely set on getting a deal then, but he wanted it to be a topic of discussion. Mainly, he was holding his ground, defending the narrative that Russians are the aggressors, Ukraine is defending itself.
Yeah, which shouldn't be up for discussion, but it is. Thank you so much. It's good to see you. The Folly of Realism. This is Alexander Vindman's book. Terrific. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me on.
Coming up, What's old is new again. There is a familiar face getting into the race to be the mayor of New York City. And the question is, are voters ready for a Cuomo comeback?